Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me at FWD50 and giving me this opportunity to do some hands-on work with AI. At this point, you've probably heard AI quite a few times. We should have had a jar where every time you heard it, you put a coin in, and we could get some pizza at the end of the conference. But here we are, and this is a great opportunity for us to really think about what does AI mean in our workflow. Right. So just so you know, this is part of a broader program that I teach called the AI Advantage, and I'll get into that in a second. But what we're going to cover in the next half hour is, firstly, why are we here? Let's talk about that. Some details about this particular session. I want to tell you not to start with AI. I have to, because I have to define it and do some level setting for you. But don't start with AI. Start with your process first, and we'll get into that. And then we'll talk a bit about the details, because anytime we teach a course on AI, by the next week, those tools are outdated, or in public service, those tools are not allowed, or in public service, this team is using this and that team is using that. So it's a big consideration about which tools we use. And then I'm going to close off with 3 very quick case studies. And that's also kind of the flow of what the workshop will be when we have a bit more time. So why are we here? AI is transforming pretty much everything we do. So whether it's in the world of work or in our personal lives, our kids, our family members are starting to talk to us. We're in election season in the United States, and artificial intelligence has played a role there too. We have deep fakes that are having significant impact, quite a significant measurable impact in how people vote. Right. So this makes it a moral imperative, a professional imperative for us to really dig in and start learning about artificial intelligence and even think about how we use it ourselves. So there's also a conversation happening about productivity and AI. And you're starting to hear some, detractors saying, it's hype. We haven't really seen the productivity gains from AI, etc. And that's true. I have to agree with that. The thing is, though, productivity gains don't happen organically, right? Even traditionally in business, productivity gains happen because someone has put time aside to make sure that they happen. Someone has put in a process to make sure that they happen. So one of the first things I want to tell you today is that AI productivity gains are not an event. It's a process, and we have to invest the time into making that happen. And then I also want to tell you about the fact that it's real, this AI advantage. It is absolutely real. I use it in my everyday life all the time, and I'll tell you a bit about myself in a moment. But all this to say, let's focus on the process, and that's what we're going to get into today. And if you manage to attend the workshops later. So with that, I will say, never stop learning. Some people were, thinking about this cruising into the sunset of retirement. You've checked all the boxes, you've got the promotions, you did everything in your career, right? And, you're now just thinking about, okay, waiting for the pension, and it's all done and dusted. And then in comes this AI thing that's demanding you to start learning new tricks and tools and demanding that you change how you do things. I think for all of us, regardless of what your story and circumstance, take a deep breath and embrace that learning is part of the game. Never stop learning. All right, let's keep going. Next, just a quote there that I like to include, that we want to focus on the process. So don't just add more paint or buy a bigger brush. This notion, this discussion we're having today, this session is really think about what are you painting and how. All right, so I started by saying the AI advantage is real. Let me introduce myself. So my name is Shingai. I'm a data scientist by profession. I started my career in retail analytics many years ago, analyzing point of sale for the likes of Johnson & Johnson, Colgate, Wrigley Chewing Gum, Kraft, Cadbury, all these big manufacturers looking for an advantage from data. At that point, we weren't really talking about artificial intelligence. We were talking about the data advantage. Data is the new oil, right? So you might hear in the headlines now, people are starting to say AI is the new oil. But since the 2000s, the early 2000s and the mid 2000s, we've evolved quite a bit, and we've gone from sort of traditional analytics where we're using data to solve business problems all the way to where we are now, where artificial intelligence allegedly can give us an advantage and help us work simpler, better, faster. Okay, so that's my background, data scientist practitioner. I have worked at the Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence, translating AI research work from the people that really do this work for real, the PhDs, researchers who work on everything from how to actually get neural networks, the specific types of models to do these word predictions, all the way to even some societal stuff. What's the impact of AI? What does fairness mean? How do we quantify fairness in society once we start using these tools? Okay, so that's kind of my background and the work that I do. Today, I'm here in my capacity as an instructor. I'm teaching this program called the AI Advantage. I also teach another one called AI Policy Compass with Mila, Quebec Institute. At this stage, I'm short one, and then I'm the full Pan-Canadian AI strategy. And then I'm also doing work with the Public Policy Forum, and together we've all come together to make sure that this course is available and exists, because we really see education as the gap, right? That's the main thing, is that if we could just reach enough people and share some of these insights, then we can start to see the AI productivity promise realized in public service. Okay, so the big picture of how this works, or how you need to frame the thinking. If you leave this presentation now, there's just one singular idea I want you to think about, which is, when you think about artificial intelligence, don't start with the technology and the tools. Really think about your process and do that self-reflection of, what do I do? What's my job? What are the tasks that I need to accomplish? And then map artificial intelligence onto those hotspots. I said don't start with AI, but I'm going to, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So if you ask me to define it, artificial intelligence is really a category of models that we use, a category of models called neural networks. And those models are particularly good at predicting the next word. Okay, now you'll know about prediction because whatever your area of impact is, you probably look at some reports. You probably need to do some forecasting of some sort. You want to know how many students are going to be in your class. You want to know how many people are coming to your service institute. You want to know how many people are using your product next year, right? That's a predictive exercise. And if you can just imagine, just the image in your mind of that line, that trend line, that's typically what most of us are exposed to when we talk about prediction. But when we start to use more complex and exciting, really truly exciting models, like neural networks, we can get even more sophisticated in the level of prediction and predictive power that we can have. And to this effect, we are able to do predictive analysis on forecasting, so just numbers, really try to get a sense of, if we build a model based on numbers, how accurate would those numbers be? We can even do it with images, to the point where we can start predicting an image or generating images. And then the hot button topic that we've all been talking about recently is the large language models, right? So natural language processing, this ability to convert language and text into mathematical representations. And the minute that we can do that, that means we can now start to apply some of these predictive tools so that we can predict numbers, which we've always done, but we can also start to predict text and words to the extent that it feels like we are predicting the next word and we're talking to a person. Okay, so at the heart of all of this is math. And normally, I didn't do it today, but normally when I do any kind of course, any kind of presentation, we have to have some coding, because it's critical that you really have this idea that when we talk about AI, it's not a mythical creature. There are discussions about sentience, and I won't get into them now, but for the most part, it is truly a model that's just very good at predicting the next word. All right, so here we are. When we talk about AI, if you ask me what the definition is, I'm going to give you this one and say, largely, it's a category of models called neural networks that have enabled this ability of these large language models to learn from all kinds of bodies of text, right? Some with permissions, some without, which is part of the AI story. And when we talk about responsible AI, that is absolutely a factor. And so these bodies of text that we've been generating over a long period of time online, our blogs, our stories, all of those things, maybe not all, some of them have been used to train these models, right? Having been coded into math to train these models and create a predictive model that lets you feel like you're talking to a person. Now, part of the AI story too is that Well, this lived in math models and in Python scripts before, right? I was working with large language model Python scripts a few months ago, sorry, years ago at this point. Years ago, it feels like those were caveman days because even the types of models that we were using weren't very good. But now, fast forward, we all have access to these beautiful UIs, right? UI is user interface. We now all have access to these beautiful UIs that let us type in whatever we want to type into the large language model and get an immediate response. And there are a number of different service providers. You have the classic one most people know, OpenAI's ChatGPT. There's one called Grok, which is extremely fast. You feel like you type in a question into ChatGPT and get a response. If you type into a question into Grok, it is even faster. That's Grok with a Q. And just to keep things exciting, there's Grok with a K, which is a language model developed by Elon Musk's Twitter. And that also produces responses just like ChatGPT does. Google has one called Gemini, and then there's a company called Anthropic that has one called Claude. Cohere has one. There are a number of different companies that have these user interfaces that give you access to these large language models and let you start interacting and asking questions in natural language and getting natural language responses back. All right, so that's it, really. That's the foundation that I want to give you for what is artificial intelligence. And then we can dive into how to use it, right? What is the productivity promise? Where do we go from, okay, I get it, language models, predicting the next word. Okay, what next? Okay, just a second. One thing is this ability to communicate with these models in natural language has garnered many mixed emotions. So we have, on the one hand, excitement, the possibilities. I work in a startup now as well with a few Vector Institute alumni, and we are building artificial intelligence tools. And I can tell you on the startup side, speaking to investors and going to conferences, immense excitement, right? I also am plugged into the research community and the academic community and the research institutes, and they're much more conservative. And of course, I do work with public servants, much more conservative about how we use artificial intelligence, or highlighting some of the key risks, including some ethical considerations. What does it mean to use these tools that we don't really know where the data came from usually to train these models, some privacy issues around that, biases, they get things wrong all the time, the examples I could show you. And then the reality that if we are able to augment ourselves, if we do get this productivity promise right, it may have consequences for the workforce, right? There will be workforce disruptions. Hear me when I say this. I work in industry, in private sector industry, with these tools, developing some of the most advanced tools in artificial intelligence. I can assure you the job losses are coming. And I say that to be alarmist, but it is also justified. And I hope it's the basis for a healthy conversation about what next. Okay, so there we are, just laying the foundation for what we're talking about. In public service, what are we using AI for? So the traditional thing is to say anything that's text related, right? Because it's the language models that are hot off the press right now. We can talk about image generation and video generation. That's a chapter for later. In a short period of time, let's just get into what are the key things that we can do with text. So we have drafting things, presentations, outlines, editing, preparing, researching, brainstorming, supporting, summarizing, writing, creating, etc. All these good things. Now, when we say these things, a lot of the times it feels like it's a helicoptering into your circumstances and saying, oh, you can summarize this document with AI, go, right? But then does that equal productivity gain? There are many different frameworks for productivity gain, but some of the more popular ones, and we use them in engineering and in manufacturing all the time, right? You have to define your process and your system and your objectives. You have to measure, you have to analyze, you have to improve, and then you have to control, right? You have to maintain the system to make sure that it's continuing to do what you intended. So when we talk about productivity and some of these benefits and the uses of AI in public service, what we're trying to do is bridge the gap between the two. And there are many ways to do that. If we keep going in the story, we'll find that some of the tasks that, and some of them are mentioned above, we can use AI in public sector. There are AI guidelines already in public sector, and I've got a number of links attached to this presentation where you can see what the government of Canada has said you can do. What are the considerations if you choose to use artificial intelligence? What do you need to think about, right? And I'd say on this slide that the key takeaway is AI doesn't come in isolation. We require subject matter experts that augment themselves as subject matter experts with the foundational knowledge to leverage the tool and then use it in public service, right? I'll give you a quick example. I teach high school students still, Friday afternoons at 5 p.m. through Wood Green Community Services. And I can see the evolution, right? They went through the phases of they all want to be influencers and that's all they want to do. And, you know, despite my best efforts, that's what they wanted to do in life. Fine. Now you can see they have an interest in artificial intelligence. They genuinely do. They get it. But mostly they see it as a tool to make their homework easier or potentially do their homework for them. And I have to say, many adults see it that way too. That instinctive, is this cheating, is not far-fetched, it's real. The difference is, if you're a subject matter expert who is hired in a role to do a job and you are now leveraging AI, in theory, you should have been hired with the right skills and capabilities to be able to do that job. And therefore, you leveraging AI is a different conversation than a high school student that I'm teaching who doesn't have the skills. They are presently in school, so they can learn some skills, right? And for them, leveraging the technology without that foundational knowledge is dangerous. So in those classes, I spend most of my time showing them where AI doesn't work, showing them the limitations of AI, rather than, oh, here are the benefits like I might do with you, right? So it's imperative that we really clock this, that it's not just you're an educator, you put your curriculum into AI, into a tool, brilliant user interface, boom, 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 you get your lesson plan, you get your assignments, you get your marking criteria, and rock and roll, you start using it. It is an iterative process about the user as subject matter expert working with the tools to produce a higher quality product and to do so more efficiently. Okay, so, you know, all these calls to say, stop programming, kids don't need to learn to code, et cetera, I am not a proponent of that, because we all have this foundational knowledge in something, right? Maybe it's policy making, maybe it's data science and education, whatever your background knowledge is, it is valuable, right? And I just also want to call out the humanities. If your background is in humanities, it is valuable. You need to have a seat at the AI table, because AI is now everywhere, which is one of the first things that I said when we started this presentation. All right, you'll find all kinds of documents about boosting AI productivity. I won't get into them. The one sort of cheat sheet that I can share with you in a short presentation is, how do you start? Okay, so you could start with doing recipes and it helping you do this and that, fine. But for your job, for your work, for this productivity promise, where do you start with AI? And so to me, I would say, and this is part of an exercise that I do with working professionals and public servants, what do you do? What do you do? What's your job? And maybe you need to go back to your job description. You can pull it out from, most of us still have them, or in your contract it was outlined. Go pull that out. Look at your actual day, what you fill your day with, right? And really get good at articulating your steps. What are your deliverables? What problems do you solve? And as public servants, how do you serve? Okay, then after we do that, we actually really want to tie this to how we are measured. So it's no use me going down the road of, you know, creating the ultimate AI tool to do something that's unrelated to my performance, how I'm measured, the job that I do, what takes me time, okay, because usually I have to account for my time. And in private sector, we do this very well, because time equals money, and that's an easy thing for us to measure. It's a North Star that everyone in the organization can sort of galvanize behind. In public service, it's a bit more complex than that, because it's not just about money. It's not just about cost cutting. It's also genuinely about people and about service delivery. And it's also about the vision and what we want for our country, right? So think about how you serve and then how you measure that. And it's okay to include some of those qualitative measures, right? It's part of the story if you really want AI to serve you. And then the last piece is, you got to map this process. You have to map your process in terms of step one. This is what I do. This is how I work. For example, I need to develop content like this to teach public servants about AI and productivity, what's the first thing that I need to do? I need certain content. I'm going to refer to my sources. There's underlying knowledge that I have that I think is going to be critical for you to learn, for us to go on this learning journey together. So I need to outline that, detail it in order for me to be able to give you a comprehensive program that I've generated. And then next, I want to show you some of the ways that I leverage artificial intelligence to be able to do that. Now, we'll get to the place where you too, in your role and what you do, will be able to think, okay, these are my process steps. This is where AI can jump in. This is how I can do it. But maybe just through me sharing my story, that can be helpful to you. So the first example that I want to show you, and we're going like lightning speed. I apologize for that, but perhaps there'll be time for us to really go through the examples later. But the first two are kind of fast. And those of you who've kind of been tinkering with artificial intelligence already might have heard of them. So I'm not telling you anything groundbreaking in the first two examples, but hear me out. So the first one, I'm going to present to you my problem statement, because that's where we start. We start with, what do you do? What are your deliverables? How are you measured? How are you using your time? And where can AI jump in? My process. So one of the things that I do is generate educational materials. I mentioned that the Mila Quebec AI Institute is one of the stakeholders in the development of this program that I'm making. And so that is based in Montreal, a French-speaking region of Canada. And my French is passable, but I gotta say, being in an environment where I'm actually working and creating content and it's rapid fire, I found that really challenging. And so language is text, and we know that language and text are good use cases for artificial intelligence. So my brain started going, okay, well, how can AI jump in? And I went into the artificial intelligence engines. On this particular occasion, I was using Gemini and OpenAI. Yes, I used two different ones concurrently. And I started with, what are ways that I can augment myself in this environment where I need to be able to speak better than I currently do in this language. Okay, great. Rock and roll. I first thought, okay, maybe let me download a model that runs locally on my machine. And then that way, there's no data leakage, right? Because it's super important. I can't be in meetings, like doing real-time translation. Maybe people don't know that I'm doing it. And then maybe this is being transmitted outside of my computer and outside of the environment. Massive potential security issues there, privacy issues, etc. So that's not going to work. On this particular occasion, however, it turns out that the Institute uses Google Suite. And so within Google Suite, when you're in meetings, they now have an AI-powered functionality that lets you use closed captions, but you can translate the closed captions. So it's closed captions for a meeting happening in French, and I can choose to have that captioning done in English. So the meeting is happening in real time, and I can have the audio in French, and I can have the visual captions in English. And I did it, and it worked. It really felt like the Star Trek Universal Translator is here, where you can land on a planet anywhere in the world where people speak a different language, and through real-time translation, captioning, etc., you can actually participate and be included where otherwise you might have been, you might have chosen to sit it out because you say, oh, I don't speak that language, or I'm not part of that community, or I don't know this particular thing, right? So this is a productivity gain, right? Because think about what I would have had to do otherwise. I might have had to do, a whole process outside of the meeting to get up to speed, or I might have depended on someone else's time for them to sit with me afterwards. This was an example in my process where I had a problem statement, and it was able to help me. I was able, through existing infrastructure that the organization had that had already been vetted for its own security protocols, I was able to get up to speed and solve my problem. Okay, check. That's example number one. Example number two. Now, in my work, I have to read a lot. And I would advise you also to read a lot. The influencers and social media people talking about AI are wonderful. I am one of them. You can find me on LinkedIn, but you should also do your own independent research. And not just the short things that are packaged and neat and easy to consume. I'm talking about, let's go into academic papers. Let's talk to academics. Let's read. I mentioned Vector Institute and Mila AI Quebec Institute. Those are Canadian institutes with researchers that are funded by federal, provincial governments, as well as private sector, to say that we want to lead in AI. So incredible work happening there. Start reading those papers. Why not? Well, I can tell you one reason why not. They're dense and they're often very difficult to digest. I myself have to read them multiple times as well. So here's what we could do. We can start with a paper. This is actually a blog. Cameron R. Wolf is somebody that I follow. He's a social media guy, but he's also a PhD and does really great work deconstructing artificial intelligence news and topics. So if you follow this paper, fantastic, riveting read. It's going to be incredible for you to just sit and go through this, and you'll learn a lot about prompt engineering. And many courses will, just do, hey, here's a cheat sheet for prompt engineering. Fantastic, it's useful, it's helpful. But I want you to read this paper because this really gets into the heart of how prompting happens, how computers and algorithms and AI really understand what's happening with language when you interact with them. But as we know, this is hard to digest. It can be really tough to read this kind of content. So the next thing that you can do is put that into something called Notebook LM, which most of you, if you haven't discovered it, you're welcome. It is actually really digestible and really easy to use. You can plug in your document, and then once you have your document, you rock and roll, you're able to start listening to it. And there are different versions, one of which sounds a bit like a podcast, so it's easy to digest. And you can do this with any academic paper, any PDF, any document, obviously responsibly, right? I would not encourage you to use your confidential documents with this. As far as reading academic papers and public materials, please feel free to try it and see if it helps you digest content a little bit better. Okay, so that's one great example. You can try it, see if it works for you if you have access to Gmail. All right, the last one. Now, my problem statement was I need to do presentations often, and I often need to do them fast, because things like this happen where, hey, Shingai, are you available? And actually I am available, but I might think, oh, how long will it take me to do this sort of presentation and slides? It might take me too long. Let's not do that. Okay, so in this particular instance, what I did was I went into first the content I wanted to develop a presentation on was, I too have written an academic paper and it's dense. Here we go. Dense academic paper. Ooh, diagrams. So this is co-authored with people on the Theoric team. I mentioned a couple of people from the Vector Institute that I work with. We came together and we built this company. So this paper outlines what we were trying to do with this company. Very dense. The next step was, okay, well, let's get this into that audio thing, that notebook LM, to see how people receive it. What are the things that we can take out and use? Okay, check, done. If you listen to this, it's actually quite digestible, it's easy. And I can tell you, as someone who co-authored the actual original academic paper versus the summary that you get from a tool, it's really close, it's really good. I'm confident that what you're getting is close to the intention, very close to the intention of what we put into that paper when we wrote it. But the last thing I want to highlight to you is when it came down to actually creating presentation slides, my problem statement being never enough time, need to get this done quickly, and I need it to be accurate. In that instance, I went to a large language model and said, hey, can you create some script for me? What's script? And this is where you'll say, oh, Shingai, you're losing the crowd. I don't code, so this doesn't apply to me. Well, you don't have to code. The good news is the language models are pretty good at developing code for you. So I literally said, can you create some apps script for me to take content from this PDF light paper that I co-authored and put it into a format that I can just copy paste into here. And when I hit run, I want you to output some slides for me. Okay, so here we go. I now have slides, right, directly from the PDF. And then I tried to format them and automate that, didn't work so well. Still working on it. This is where I landed, and it's still pretty neat. So here we are, folks. The AI advantage is real. Don't start with AI. Map your process first. Start by defining your tasks and your problem statements. Leverage generative AI tools to support you and augment what you do. That's okay. There's much documentation of how we can do that responsibly. Test and iterate. You're not going to get it straight away like I did with the PowerPoint slides. And at the end of the day, never stop learning. Thank you so much for your time. Let me know if you've got questions, and hope to see you on LinkedIn if you have additional questions for follow-up.
As always, Shingai, you managed to cram a lot of information into a very short amount of time. Thank you so much. Did you use that technique to make this slide deck?
No, not this one. This one I had help from real humans. And
that's what you'd say if you'd had, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And it's great to see your face 2 weeks in a row. Keep fighting the good fight. And thanks again for joining us. And I'm now going to throw things back over to Hillary on the main stage.